Okay, parents, your kids are going to turn out just fine.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by FOCO. That's FOCO, F-O-C-O. If you are a parent of a child or teen with ADHD, you know how challenging it can be to keep them focused and engaged. FOCO is the all-natural solution for ADHD, whether it's for school, homework, or just everyday activities. FOCO helps your child or teen stay calm and attentive. Before trying prescription drugs like Adderall that can come with harsh side effects, I recommend you try FOCO. Visit ThinkFOCO, that's ThinkFoco, thinkfoco.com for more information. Welcome to the Your Kids Will Be Fine podcast. I am Dr. Michael Malopsky, board certified pediatrician and father of 7. On Your Kids Will Be Fine, we always are looking to help parents manage the era of information overload and help families make sound parenting decisions to hopefully decrease your anxiety, improve your confidence, and let you know that your kids will be fine. This week's podcast, we are talking about a topic that I believe is becoming foundational with regard to understanding so many issues in pediatric health and well-being. It is a topic that is well tread in the functional and integrative space, but yet still, I think in traditional pediatrics, for a multitude of reasons, we don't really have the ability or the education to address it. And that is the issue with the gut-brain axis and the gut-brain connection. So there's multiple barriers to why this topic is not, I think, gaining more widespread acceptance and how it's passed on in its importance to our patients and our families. I think the first issue is education. This is a topic that most of us did not get a lot of in med school, and yet pediatric GI specialists, gastrointestinal specialists, mental health specialists, weight metabolism specialists all recognize how central this topic is to all those areas of child health. But yet, in general pediatric training, it isn't something that we really spent a lot of time on. I hope that's changing, but when I speak to current residents in training and people recently out of training, I still don't see it. It's something that I had to educate myself on and really dive into on my own. I think the second big reason why these issues aren't being really communicated and talked about and taught from pediatricians to patients' families is simply a matter of time. Most big practices simply are unable to devote the significant amount of time that it takes to really talk about these things, answer questions, talk about not just the concepts, but how to practically approach it when you're concerned about these issues in your home and for your child's health. It's simply not possible when our insurance companies continue to erode and make it more difficult for us to get paid for our work. And therefore we have to see more patients in a shorter amount of time. And that presents a big challenge. And it's part of the brokenness of the system, which is one of those things we hope to fix. But when we talk about it, I think it's important for families, parents especially, to understand and be able to visualize what it is we mean and what are actionable steps when it comes to actually addressing these things in the home for the benefit of our children's health. So when we talk about specifically the gut-brain axis, what we're talking about is the bidirectional communication between our central nervous system, the brain in our head, and our gut nervous system. And I think it's pretty well known, but it may not be, that our intestinal tract has an entire separate nervous system, neural network that is about the size in terms of mass as the one in our head, that big, spread out all along the gut, that regulates all of the complex functions of the gut, the endocrine function, neuronal function, immune function, all of those things. So it's the bidirectional communication between those two separate nervous systems that integrates all those functions, the neural, the endocrine, the immune, and the microbiome, the microbial signals. And so first, let's talk about the 4 key pathways that have to do with this gut-brain axis. So first, the neural pathways. You have a huge nerve coming out of your brain and your brain stem that goes down and directly fans out and directly interfaces with your enteric nervous system, your gut brain. That's your vagus nerve. The enteric nervous system is often called your second brain. And those neurons independently regulate all the things like motility, how your gut moves, secretion, what hormones, substances, and all those things that go into digestion, managing, processing food, absorbing food. All those interact through the vagus nerve. So there's a direct neuronal bidirectional communication. The second is the endocrine pathway. You have many hormones are actually produced in the gut and move up and down and actually interact with our central nervous system. I think the one that's become more common in the popular vernacular is GLP-1, simply because we now have shots and therapies around managing or mimicking that hormone both in our brain and our gut. So the fact that it works in both places when you inject it is a pretty clear indication about how that hormone that's produced in our gut works in both places. Cholecystokinin, serotonin, a whole multitude of neurotransmitters that are produced in our gut and move up and down into a whole array of brain regions that affect many different things: mood, satiety, mental health, how we crave or function around appetite and calories, all sorts of things. There are endocrine pathways. There are, we talked about that. So immune pathways. So your gut is completely filled with lymphoid immune tissue, the gut associated lymphoid tissue, and they produce immune mediators, cytokines, that facilitate communication between the gut and the brain. They can influence how the blood-brain barrier, meaning how permeable, what moves from your bloodstream into your brain. And that, of course, can also have impact on neuroinflammation. There are so many conditions that we know now that are neuroinflammatory that have a direct connection to gut function. One of those may be things like pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric syndrome, or PANS or PANDAS. And I think that's probably the most prominent one, but there are increasing body of research and observational studies around so many behavioral and neuropsychiatric presentations in children that are significantly improved, altered by changing and altering the response of that lymphoid tissue, that lymphoid immune response in the gut. And then there's microbial metabolites. That's the microbiome. As we're all aware, we have a huge population of friendly bacteria that live throughout our gut, are influenced by the environment of the gut and the function of the gut, and what we put in our gut, and produce significant metabolites that move into our central nervous system and influence many things, including mental health, metabolic health. That's all been well established. So those are the four main pathways and how the gut-brain axis functions. So I think that it's great information, and it's really good for cocktail party talk. But when it comes to talking to families and having conversations in the office about, well, what are actionable steps if we're committed as a family to improving this and to making this work for our child, perhaps to even start a more functional integrative treatment for symptoms that we're seeing, whether it be mood, behavioral, neuropsychiatric, metabolic, weight, then where do we start? And there's probably a couple of simple steps. I want to refer people to an excellent book written by Dr. Elisa Song, S-O-N-G, who is a real thought leader in this space. She has an Instagram account and she has a book on the topic. But there are the simple actionable steps that all families can take when it comes to healing, optimizing, and managing the gut-brain axis. So the first, most important, is added sugar. There's no question anymore, it's not really controversial science, that a significant amount of added sugar in the diet alters the gut-brain axis through the alteration of the microbiome, as well as perhaps even the endocrine function of the gut. And we talked about that bidirectional connection with our brain. I think that most people will agree and fall on that if you can limit all added sugars to 25 grams a day, you're doing well. Obviously, less is more. And that really comes down to a really simple understanding of being able to look at the labels of your food, be able to understand what are the most common and toxic sources of added sugar. In pediatrics, by far, the most problematic source of added sugar in child's diet is liquid sugar. So that's the sugar in all the beverages that children are offered and even advertised as healthy. That includes fruit juice derived beverages, obviously soda, includes sports drinks, iced teas, Starbucks, so many things that we tend not to think about or may not even have it clearly labeled. But liquid sugar is probably the most important source, but added sugar being a really simple, not easy, but simple, actionable step. The second is fiber. I've talked about this before, but there is, once again, no doubt, and the science around this continues to expand on how maximizing fiber intake has a massive, massive effect on gut function and therefore the gut-brain axis, probably through nurturing, improving, and managing the microbiome as well as the endocrine function of the gut. Several studies coming out specifically looking at things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, where those symptoms positively respond to nothing other than maximizing fiber intake above 20 to 30 grams a day, controlled for all the other things like exercise, sleep, all those other things. So added sugar, fiber. And then the third is processed foods. I think that whatever we all think of RFK Jr.'s leadership of the Human Health and Human Services Department, and we certainly can talk about that, he has cast a big light on the fact that so much of the food that's sold, advertised, and marketed to children and families are filled with additives and dyes, many of which are banned in other countries, and most of them have been shown to directly influence childhood neurobehavioral function. And once again, the way place that action occurs is likely through the gut-brain axis. So processed and ultra-processed foods. Many families ask me point blank, how do I, as someone, I'm not a food scientist, I went to college, my husband and I both work. How do we figure out, how do we know what's a processed or an ultra processed food? I think the simplest way is when you're buying something that isn't single ingredient fresh food that you're cooking yourself, is when you look at a food label, all the ingredients should be immediately recognizable as something that you do or could have as a foodstuff or ingredient in your home. And when you can't recognize that, and when you can't recognize a citation or an ingredient on a packaged food that falls into that category, it's processed or ultra processed. So avoiding that as much as possible and eliminating those things from the family household diet and your child's diet, once again, all have the biggest impact. The added sugar, the addition of the fiber and maximizing fiber, and the elimination of the additives and dyes in ultra processed food. Small changes in our kids can have large results. We see it over and over again in our adolescent mental health clinic, in our office, and of course, more and more case-controlled and placebo-controlled trials are all being run to show the same thing. So once again, the gut-brain axis is central to your child's health on so many levels. I hope we I'll be able to elucidate how that works. 3 simple steps that every family can take to immediately improve that function in ourselves and our children. And once again, don't forget to find us on every platform where you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and the like. Don't forget to go to our website, yourkidswillbefine.com, where you can download every episode and also leave us comments and show suggestions. And we're looking forward to seeing you the next time.